So today, we're diving into a topic that, from the outside, often looks like one single solid group, the Orthodox Brahmin community. But as we're about to see, it's not really a monolith at all. It's much more like a massive, incredibly complex tree with all these different branches. Which brings us to the big question right up front. Are all Brahmins the same? I mean, it's a pretty common assumption, right? That they're just this one uniform group at the top of the social ladder. But is that really the whole story? Well, the source material we're digging into today says not even close. What it shows us is a reality that's way more intricate. It reveals this multi-layered internal hierarchy, a kind of social tree with a very clear structure, from the highest leaves all the way down to the lowest roots. All right, so let's explore these branches together. We're going to start at the very, very top of this social pyramid and then work our way down tier by tier. So who's sitting at the absolute peak of this tree? That would be the Vedikas. This is a group that's revered as the keepers of the most ancient and sacred knowledge in the entire tradition. What makes a Vedika is their total and complete mastery of the Vedas. And we're not just talking about being scholars. Their entire lives are built around practicing and preserving these ancient texts, which puts them in this position of, ultimate ritual purity. Their role really breaks down into three huge parts, and each one is absolutely crucial. First, they have to memorize the Vedas, which is, a lifetime's work in itself. That knowledge is what qualifies them to perform the most ancient rituals, the yajnas. And on top of all that, their day-to-day lives are strictly governed by ancient codes of law. It's this complete dedication that really sets them apart from every other group. Okay, so moving down from that very top peak, we start to find the priests who actually interact with the wider community. And it's right here that the branches of our trees start to split in some really fascinating and pretty significant ways. First up, you've got the Purohitas. You can think of these as the family priests. They're the experts in the Grihya Sutras, which are the texts that cover all the rules for domestic life. So they're the ones performing all the daily rituals and sacraments for families. But you guessed it, even this group is not all the same. And this is where we hit our first major split. The source describes two different tiers of these family priests. There's an elitist group that will only serve other Brahmin families, and that gives them a higher status. And then there's a commoner group that provides services to everybody else in the community, which in turn places them on a lower rung within their own category. Next, let's talk about the Archikas. These are the priests you'd see serving in the major temples. And if you thought that last division was interesting, well, this group is split along lines that are even more contentious. So inside the world of temple priests, there's a huge division, and it's all about lineage. On one side, you have what the source calls the real Brahmins, who come from hereditary priestly families. But on the other side, there are those it terms faux Brahmins, people who got their position through social or class mobility. As you can probably imagine, their status is a very, very sensitive topic. The source actually names these groups for us, the Kovalars and the Gurukuls, and it all depends on which sect they belong to. But listen to how the text describes this internal split. I'm quoting directly here. It calls it a very contentious and sensitive matter. That really tells you just how deep these lines of separation can go. All right, now we need to travel down to the very roots of the Brahmin tree. And this is, hands down, the most paradoxical and surprising part of this entire structure. Here, we find a group known as the Essential Outcasts. This group is called the Apara Prayogis. Their job, their essential function, is to perform all the funeral ceremonies. And that means they have to do things like eat funeral meals and accept gifts connected with death, all acts that are considered ritually very impure. So here it is, the central paradox. They are absolutely essential. A funeral literally cannot happen without them. And yet, because of this deep association with death, they are seen as untouchable by their own Brahmin community. To really drive home just how stark their social position is, the source material offers one truly shocking observation. It says, and they are shunned even by the Dalits. Just that one sentence reveals this profound, almost complete social isolation of a priestly class that is also completely necessary. So we've seen all the different branches, from the top to the very bottom. But that begs the question, how does a structure this rigid actually stay in place? What are the rules of the game that keep all these groups so separate? Well, according to the source, it all boils down to three very clear rules of social distancing. First, no eating together between the different groups. Second, no intermarrying between groups. And third, just a general, everyday observance of social distance. It's these three things together that create a really powerful social barrier. And really, these three simple but incredibly powerful rules are the glue holding this whole thing together. They're what ensures that the Vaidikas, the Purohitas, the Atrakas, and the Aparaprayogis all stay in their designated place on this Brahmin tree. And all of this brings us to one final thought. Taking a deep dive into this one specific community, it really raises a much bigger question for all of us, doesn't it? It kind of forces us to look around and wonder, what are the unseen hierarchies, the unspoken rules, and maybe even the essential outcasts that shape our own communities today?